BBC2 Clive Barker continues his A to Z of horror, examining the cinematic lure of Satan. It includes extracts from one of the scariest movies ever, The Exorcist, and contains strong language.
When the film The Exorcist was released in 1973, the devil had been dormant for some while. He'd been reduced to a figure of fun, comic relief in kids' cartoons. What writer William Peter Blatty and director William Friedkin understood so well is that the dark gods still exist, expressions of our deepest fears and desires.
Sleet and icy rain, New Yorkers are standing in 4-hour lines at the Cinema One Theater on 2nd Avenue.
The Exorcist, which has finally made its $10 million way to your local movie theater, is a disgusting, dazzling, horrible, gasp-inducing super thriller. A movie that will, for many, clearly have gone too far by the time it is only about half over.
I remember at the box office they were passing out air sickness bags.
The word that the best thing to use when people got ill on your carpet was kitty litter.
Women 2 rows behind me literally fainted. She screamed and fainted. They must have been prepared for this because people came rushing in from the back of the theater, picked this woman up, and took her right out.
Friedkin is maliciously accomplished at setting us up for shocks and then mowing us down with them.
I was a part of the film, but I have never met anyone who was in the film. I met Bill Friedkin, that's it. I was a stranger, wandering alone through The Exorcist.
Can I help you?
1 for The Exorcist, please.
My agents called and said that there was a Hollywood director who wanted to call me.
Enjoy the movie.
I said, what do they want with me? And he said, well, Mr. Friedkin believes, and these were his words, that you're the only person on the face of the earth who could do justice to the part of the demon. Ho, 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 double-edged sword. I don't want to play any devil. I'm an Irish Catholic. On the other hand, if I'm the only one in the world who can do it.
Somebody told me that there was a magazine that's a horror magazine, and they ran a contest for the 40 scariest movies of all time. And the results of the contest were that the first 39 places were The Exorcist.
It's what we would call today a docudrama. So a great deal of it is based on whatever we could discover about the original case.
The novel that Bill Blatty wrote is based on a true case of demonic possession, or a possible case. There are more things in heaven and earth than we can understand or appreciate or explain. And I still feel that's true of The Exorcist.
I just never anticipated the dementia that grew up around the experience of reading the book or seeing the film. And the closest I've been able to come to explaining it is that there is a deep-seated belief in the core of many people that a malevolent and intelligent force of evil personified does exist.
It was a true possession, by which I mean very specifically that Satan had taken over the body of that child and controlled her movements and her voice.
It just really, really affects me, the voice, because the voice is what bothered me the most about the whole movie.
They had trouble keeping ushers working on the floor. Some couldn't take it because of the noise, the sound. You go home, you hear his voice every day you come to work. this voice, you know.
I think I heard that voice a few times in my imagination and, you know, kind of freaked afterwards.
The sound that came out of Reagan was horrifying. It was just horrifying.
My duty was to fall in love with and or understand and have compassion for the fallen Prince of Heaven. I had a feeling that if I could become an entity, not a voice. That drives me crazy when people say you were the voice in The Exorcist. No. I tried very hard to create a character, a demon, Lucifer.
She said, I haven't had a drink for 25 years, but if you let me drink some whiskey, it will affect, and she said, and I haven't smoked cigarettes. I've been off cigarettes for 10 years, but if I start smoking, you will find weird things happening with my voice. And she said, and let me take some raw eggs, put some raw eggs down my throat with whiskey and cigarettes. Let me have my priest there, and let's see what happens. She said, why don't you tie me to the chair, and why don't you put me through some kind of physical torture as well? Which we did.
They tore a sheet up, and they restrained me, my hands, my knees, my feet, my neck. Look what happens to your voice. It has to happen when you have no freedom. The only way I can do it now is by clutching my hands behind me.
I did a number of things, in addition to the demon voice, to just grab the audience's attention at certain places. They had conducted an exorcism in Rome, in the Vatican, and they made a very crude recording. All of a sudden, across this tape would come these blood-curdling screams of agony that was coming out of something that did not sound human. And I mixed that into the soundtrack as well.
There were certain key sounds that subliminally, I think, when they occurred, you'd know something else was going to be happening, or that you were supposed to feel a certain thing, I think. All these sounds were augmented and layered and, you know, stacked with combinations of sound. As I say, nothing was literal. I mean, you know, if you just have a bed shaking and you mic it, I mean, it's just not enough. They're breaking windows from the prop shop, you know, I mean, just going around the lot here at Warner Brothers and just, yeah, I'll take that one and the one that was used in Gone with the Wind, and, you know, all these, you know, and with us, what are you going to do with those? Well, we're going to break them. They sent me a tape recorder, and I just went out every screwy place I could think of. I went to the slaughterhouse where they were killing pigs. These pigs knew they were going to get it, so the fear of that was really, you know, because pigs are intelligent animals, and they're actually smarter than dogs. So I got a lot of that stuff.
Very often, whereas the soundtrack was, for the most part, or for a great deal of the film, was loud and clangy and disturbing, I would also take it down to a whisper. And then very often I would go to absolutely dead silence, the contrast of which provoked and kind of enhanced the idea of light and dark, good and evil.
So many people would say, oh, how could you possibly talk like that? I mean, some of that language that you used in that film, that was... Well, come on, lady. That was the devil, not Billy Graham. He talked like the devil would talk.
After the release of the film, I remember that Billy Graham, in a sermon, stated that there was a power in the film itself. I mean, he meant in the film itself, which could not be quantified, could not be identified, but there was an X factor in that film which was evil and dangerous.
I think it's the scariest movie because it is not so far-fetched. It does seem within the realm of possibility. It is like something rising up from the dark sea inside, and it's very old fear.
Here you had this naive, good little child that is taken over by the devil. Here you have in the audience this 17, 18, 19, whatever I was at the time, year old kid from Brooklyn, New York, who is not all good, who has done some pretty bad things in his life, or not. And if this can happen to her, then it can certainly happen to me.
The people who said they had to go into therapy and they had to go to their confessor, or they had to run and hide, or take medication, or vomit explosively, I think they brought those neuroses into the theater with them. They didn't pick them up from the screen. The special effects wouldn't do that. I was the sound of a human being. I couldn't do that unless the receptivity was there and ready to identify.
I have no doubt that The Exorcist moved people very, very profoundly. There's always an attempt to try and label and diffuse the impact of something that moves us deeply. I mean, very few people want to really accept the stuff that's going on there and accept it as a kind of, unknowable phenomena. It's easier to call it a horror film.
The second time I saw the film was in Rome with all of these bishops and a cardinal or two. They were enraptured by it. And they would be very critical of anything they didn't believe in.
The Pope did make a statement within a year following the release of The Exorcist, might have been shortly thereafter, reaffirming the Church's position on the existence of Satan, a supreme and intelligent force of evil, a person at large in the universe. I'm sure that has something to do with The Exorcist.
It's one of the influences in my life that teaches me the broad canvas that every human being is. I am as demonic as Satan ever was. If it's in me, it's in you. And it's in everybody. Everybody. No one is without it. It's alarming sometimes to think of that. I believe I can live with the devil in me. I'm not sure I can live with the people who want to control the devil in me.